Saudi. I want to talk about Saudi. We mentioned it a couple of times before on the pod. Azim's fairly clued in with it all. Now, the rumours for a while have been going, haven't they, as you mentioned, without anything happening. The latest idea that I've heard is that it's going to be possibly 7 or 8 teams around the world playing 4 Grand Slam-style tournaments in different venues. So I presume one will be in Saudi, at least. I presume Saudi Arabia will have links to one of the teams. Otherwise, it seems a bit of a strange concept. What do you know about this, and what are the chances of it actually happening?
Well, I'd be surprised if the final wasn't played in Riyadh, and that's the first thing to say. This idea of Grand Slams comes up all the time, like how do we divide the windows? Well, this reporting from Australia, it was Chris Barrett from the Sydney Morning Herald who broke this story a couple of weeks ago. There are strong links back to Australia in all of this as well, which is quite interesting. It kind of hints that people within Australian cricket are hoping to almost work with Saudi Arabian capital rather than work against it. So how can they maybe deaden the sharpest edges of what Saudi Arabian investment might look like? I don't really know. But in the model advanced in that story, there would be 8 teams and there would be 4 windows where they basically play 4 Grand Slams. So there'd be London versus Sydney versus Mumbai versus Riyadh versus whatever. There was a line in that report suggesting that it might provide more money for Test cricket because there'd be a distribution of funds back from there to Test cricket. I mean, good luck with that, especially when there's private investment involved. I can't exactly see them entering into redistributive politics. And also, where in the schedule would it sit? Where are these magical 4 windows at the moment when the schedule's already a total nightmare? It's
well, they can't find it, right? So surely they'd have to go up against some other franchises. I can't see them having their own window.
And which is where, to me, one of the most interesting points of all of this, because the previous big Saudi thread was the second IPL. The idea of a second IPL. Let's go back in time a little bit here. Remember the Champions League T20 that was played for about 3 or 4 years?
Yeah,
at least 10 years ago.
More,
it got a good run in the early days.
Sydney Sixers won it, didn't they?
Sydney Sixers won it. I think the Perth Scorchers won it one year.
Right.
You know, my point is that it was a thing that existed and there was a window carved out for it and it was in October. And that October window has never really been utilised since, other than when the pandemic struck and the IPL needed to use it, right?
Yeah.
So the idea of an air quote second IPL or a mini IPL has continued to rattle around ever after. 2 years ago, the suggestion was that the mini IPL or the second IPL could be the avenue for the Saudi money to eventually reach. Is it played in Saudi Arabia? The IPL auction last year was held in Saudi Arabia. Is that where that goes? And the IPL, and not just the IPL, but the owners of the conglomerates work hand in glove with Saudi Arabia so that they can put on that second tournament each year, some version of that, or do they butt up heads against each other? Now that'd be interesting. I can't really imagine a scenario where it's allowed to reach that stage, but where the Indian interest or the conglomerate's interest who own the clubs run up, or the franchises rather, as distinct from clubs, because obviously clubs are known as something different, like where people often use the term franchise to talk about the Big Bash League at the moment, but they're not franchise teams. They're state-owned enterprises by the state boards in Cricket Australia. They haven't done the private equity thing, so I call them more clubs, whereas the franchises that do, they do what they say in the tin, really, don't they? So, that would be absolutely compelling viewing if it was the IPL owners up against the Saudi money. But honestly, can you see that happening? I mean, surely there is an accommodation made where everyone gets what they ultimately want, which is the chance to have this eating up more of the calendar and pushing Test cricket into smaller windows and the most amount of money to be made. What we said off the top, exploiting every possible opportunity to make every single dollar that's out there.
If, say, that did happen and Saudi Arabia and BCCI, Indian cricket, couldn't come to some kind of arrangement, does that kill it dead in the water? Or do you think that a Saudi Arabian competition could still be a success without BCCI support?
Like a breakaway comp or something like that. Yeah, you could see it. It wouldn't be the first time. If the money was good enough. So it's an interesting proposition, isn't it? If it was because remember that anything that doesn't have the imprimatur of the BCCI wouldn't therefore get the sanctioning from the ICC because they're effectively one and the same. So imagine you had a rebel, that's probably the better word, isn't it?
Yeah.
A rebel league that was paying...
I've known one of them in a while.
Well, it was being talked about, was it 10 or 15 years ago that would serve a similar role?
ICL.
It was the ICL, of course. That was around the same time as the IPL. But, yeah, you could see a world, I guess, where there is so much money being injected into a rebel tournament that if you're a player who's got a high profile, you might turn your head, especially if you're towards the end of your career. It might result in, I guess it could result in suspensions. That's not without precedent. It certainly did with the ICL. Did when players went to South Africa, those apartheid tours, the rebel tours of the 1980s from the Australians and the English and the West Indies too. That'd be very, very messy. You like to think it would never come to that, but who could rule these things out? We're seeing in golf that it took a couple of years for them to find a way to, broadly speaking, get everything back together after that schism. World Series cricket back in the late 70s did something similar as well. So far from without precedent.
Do you expect there to be any other ways, this Saudi money can enter the game? And I'm thinking specifically, I was half expecting there to be some Saudi Arabian money in the hundreds, but there wasn't in the end, was there? It was, owners of Birmingham City got involved, Todd Bowley at Chelsea, and then the 4 IPL franchises, amongst others. But there's plenty of other options around the world to buy franchises, even including perhaps the IPL at some point. Yeah. So is that another avenue where you expect to see Saudi money come into the game?
I think so. That's the logical thing, isn't it? And, we talk about Saudi money like this is one pot, right? It's obviously more complicated than that.
We do. We just say Saudi, don't we?
I'm aware we're doing it in simple terms just to,
PIF, shall we say. Investment fund.
Quite. I don't feel qualified to talk about the nitty-gritty of every avenue that the money would come from. But still, yes, the money that's been set aside to, shall we say, improve the reputation of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as sports washing is the obvious reference point there. But anyway, I digress. No, the buying of clubs, buying of tournaments. I too thought there might be a world where the 100 could have some Saudi link. Didn't in the end. Interesting. I wonder whether they tried. And
we don't know.
We don't know. I suppose we'll find out in the fullness of time. But that would have been an interesting intellectual exercise. What would have happened if a Saudi Arabian consortium got together and wanted to buy, let's say, the Southern Brave or whatever? I know the Southern Brave were the first one to sign on with an IPL franchise, but let's put that to one side. What if they had offered 10 times as much money as the market rate to have got a toe in the game in England? Then what happens? I don't know. I suppose that's a decision to make for those who run the show at those respective clubs and the counties now that have that opportunity to drive the car, and MCC at Lords with the London Spirit about what lines they are willing to draw, what red lines they might have about where the investment comes from. And I know Mark Nicholas, when I interviewed him last year, was like, we aren't just going to take the highest bidder's money. He was quite strident about that, about wanting to make sure that ultimately it needed to be someone who he felt had a strong interest in the game. So they have spoken openly about that. It's not just about who writes the biggest check. Well, let's see how that goes.
Well, they got a pretty big check
anyway. They got a massive check, didn't they? They got more money than they ever thought they would get out of the whole thing, which, by the way, and I know we'll move on from this, but how long before the new ownership groups, especially those who've got more than 50%, how long before they say, it's pretty good playing at these test grounds for 25 days. What about 40 days? What about double round robin? What about 8 weeks? 8 weeks sounds good. Instead of 4, what's about 8? How long before England cricket's in that world where they've got to start making compromises about their schedule in the way that, of course, at the moment, India has nearly a 4-month window for the IPL? Okay, the 100's a month right now, but that's a question on notice. How long does it remain what it is at the moment? We'll see.